Hello, everyone, and welcome to Bet the Edge, the college football takeover. If you tagged along with myself, Vaughn Dalzell, Eric Froton, and Brad Thomas last year, then you are excited and ready to hear what we have going on for the Week 1 slate. But first off, Brad and Eric, we got to give a thank you, not only to NBC for giving us the platform, not for BetMGM for sponsoring us, but all the faithful and avid viewers this year that subscribe to our channel and make this season happen for us. So today, lots of top 25 matchups, lots of Big Ten, Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, plus we brought it back, People's Parlay, Ladders, and Best Bets. So further ado, Brad, let everyone know what's going on and where we're starting with the biggest game of the slate.
Yeah, man, I am actually super excited for this game. Hot Atlanta, baby. We have number 14 Clemson taking on number 1 Georgia. Georgia's now up to minus 13.5. And when I looked at this line, I was quick, fast, and in a hurry to be excited about the home team. And I say the home team is in Georgia because they play in Atlanta all the time. I'm taking Georgia and I'm laying the points there. For me, if you look at Georgia, you think about their offense last year, top 3 in just about every good statistical category offensively. Defensively, yes, they were solid, but they could take another step forward. Starks is back, probably going to be an All-American this year. And one thing I really want to say about this game that we need to talk about is this is the FU tour for Mr. Kirby Smart. He was pissed last year. You seen those locker room videos? Yeah, he's bringing them back. He's going to play with fire, and I think he's going to put his foot down all season.
And this is a big game, Eric. I want to ask you this first because Florida State lost, right? So Clemson's now the favorites in the ACC. This is setting up for madness here with this game. So ranked number 1, Georgia, do they roll like Brad thinks? And what are you targeting in the props? Because we need your props. We missed them.
Yeah, well, let's get into a little bit of the script because that's really what I try to do when we're projecting the props is how is the flow of this game going to be? Not so much the outcome, but the flow, because our outcomes that we worry about are the player outcomes. With Georgia, offensively, surprisingly, they only ran for over 190 yards 3 times last year. It was Vanderbilt, Georgia Tech, and Ole Miss. Conversely, as a team, they threw for 261 or more yards in 10 of their first 11 games, but then threw for 175 against Georgia Tech, 243 against Bama, and with Carson Beck, we're in that 258 to 260 range right now. So from a team perspective, that is, in his lane. In terms of script-wise, because, look, 73% completion rate last year for Beck. Only needed 2.4 seconds for each throw on average. That was second in the country, only to Bo Nix, who we've seen how that quick translation, reading the defense, knowing what he has to do, and making a good, clean, deliverable ball has translated for the Broncos. And that is pretty much the exact same skill set that Carson Beck has in addition to a 14% pressure to sack rate. Elite stuff. Now, I want to talk about the explosiveness here of Georgia for a moment versus FBS teams. Georgia created 1 explosive pass play per 4.77 pass attempts. That is the 4th highest rate in the country. Now, they're playing Clemson, who ranked 2nd in the Power 4, only to Iowa, in allowing the fewest explosive passes per attempt, 11.3 explosive passes per pass attempt. So we have 2 sort of disparate skill sets that I'm very interested to see how that comes about. That being said, with Georgia's defense, their pass defense was undeniably last year elite, top 10 in success rate, yards per dropback, contested targets, all of it. But the rush D actually wasn't as good as you might expect for a Georgia team. 90th in rushing success rate, 85th in power success rate. But what did they do well? They did not allow big plays. Overall, 13th in explosiveness allowed. When it comes to the ground, right? Missouri, Ole Miss, Auburn, Georgia Tech. All of those schools weren't particularly prolific. You don't think of them being like, oh, all those schools were the juggernauts of the rushing. Maybe Missouri, but all of them were able to move it against Georgia on the ground. So with all these factors coming into play, right, I'm looking at where does that line up with the props we have, as we all know. I'm looking at Georgia's offense. Clemson's offense now as well, okay? Cade Klubnik, not prolific when it came to his passing acumen. You want explosiveness? You're not getting it from the Clemson Tigers, one of the least explosive teams in the entire country, especially in the rushing side. 126 in rushing explosiveness, 115th in power success rate. Really puts a lot of heat on Klubnik, who 128th in passing explosiveness. How is this Clemson offense going to stress Georgia's lockdown pass defense? I don't know how that's going to happen. I like Tyler Brown under 43.5 receiving yards. With Clemson's receiving core last year, it was completely depleted. Tyler Brown, as a true freshman, was pretty much the only dependable guy they had other than my boy Troy Stellato on the outside when he was healthy. That being said, TJ Moore comes in. Brian Wesco, two freshmen, lit up the spring game at 2 touchdowns. You have the rest of the entire cast back. Antonio Williams is their nominal slot receiver. Tyler Brown was playing slot. Antonio Williams is going to be drafted in the NFL. I think that kind of makes him the odd man out, that he's in the rotation point of view. Doesn't really fit the outside profile. I don't know how we see Clemson go out and move the ball efficiently against Georgia through the air. I'm taking the under on Tyler Brown.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that. I think Georgia is a team that a lot of people, including both of you guys, have ranked #1 in the country in your poll. Brett, I did want to ask you, how significant is that for you? Because that Georgia defense, we know, should be another top 5 unit in the country.
Yeah, everything that Eric said, I totally agree with. And what's funny to think about Georgia last year taking a step back or not being at the level they wanted to be in the defensive line is they can improve. They will get better. For me, I don't see how Clemson successfully moves the ball to keep up with Georgia. Eric said, he talked about the explosive plays. #1 was #3 in EPA per play on offense. Like, Cade Klubnik is going to do that against a Georgia team that's going to get better defensively. That's kind of scary. We'll talk about this later when we talk about our national champion pick and where we're going with that. But this Georgia team, I think, is kind of going a little underrated, especially with the Ohio States of the world who are out there getting a bunch of talent in the transfer portal. I'm really excited for this game. It's going to be a pretty much home crowd for Georgia. So I'm just going to have to fade Clemson in this. And it's not saying Clemson won't have a good future in the ACC this season. It's just they're up against a buzzsaw.
Yeah, will we find out? Will Brad pick Alabama? Will he pick Georgia? Will he pick somebody else to win the national championship? You have to stick around to the end to find that out. But really, with this game, I'm just really interested in what happens with the ACC picture, because if Clemson loses, now we will have our 3rd favorite in 2 weeks in college football for that conference. But the team that could be the favorite is a top 25 team, number 19, Miami. They're going on the road at Florida. They're laying 2.5 points as a favorite, total set at 54.5. And Eric, I mean, I got to tell you, you got another prop here, and you're going in the receiver market again. And I got to say, I like this play a lot, man.
Yeah, stranger things have happened than me pushing receiver unders in the prop markets here in the college football place. But that being said, I am going with the under 51.5 receiving yards for Elijah Badger. That's a situation I've been really following closely in the summer after Badger transferred to Florida post-spring. So we didn't really get to see how he would fit into the offense in the course of a normal spring and a spring game, anything like that. You have Eugene Wilson over there, who is going to take over for Ricky Pearsall as the nominal #1. But then where does Badger, fall into line? For Arizona State last year, a decidedly untalented team, he was that #1 option. He was the bell cow. He was the one who was targeted, and he was relied upon heavily on the outside. That being said, he's going to Florida now. We're in the SEC. And he's breaking into an established receiver room post-spring. And that is not always a recipe for success, despite the level of talent the player has. That being said, depth charts came out. He is listed behind Eugene Wilson on the depth chart. Now, I thought maybe he would move over to another alignment. Apparently, Billy Napier, head coach of Florida, has decided not to do that. I'm concerned, So at 51.5 receiving yards, that is not an insignificant total. Going up against Miami's secondary, who I do have a pretty good amount of respect for, give me that under.
Yeah, I can see that too. I wanted to ask Brad because we need a game pick. We can't have all these props, Eric. We know you're the king of this, right? But we do need some sides. And when I look at Florida, they're always a good home dog situation, in my opinion. The Swamp is such a hard place to play. Brad, I know you are a big fan of Miami this year. They arguably have the best roster in the ACC. Is that being too crazy?
No, that's not being crazy at all. Maybe if you want to rank Clemson a little bit higher or close, that's fine. When we think about this game and we talk about Miami, I think a lot of people are going to get caught up in the buzz and forget where this game is being played at, right? This game being played in the Swamp. I wish it were a night game. I think it's a 3:30 kick. Doesn't matter. Swamp's one of the loudest stadiums, one of the hardest places to play in the entire world. The line opened around -1 for Miami, close to a pick. I'm now moving up to the 3 target. For me, I don't want to be involved in a game where Miami is better on both sides of the line of scrimmage. Miami's better in the secondary. Miami has a better running game with Damian Martinez, better quarterback. Sorry, Graham Mertz with Cam Ward here. I don't want to get caught in a trap situation where they lose and everyone's scratching their heads. What happened, right? This is the pivotal moment for the Gator season. It's funny we say that week 1, first game of the season, pivotal moment. But if you hear what's coming out of the program, you read between the lines. I've been doing these air quotes a lot because I've been trying to do that all off season. You're going to hear a lot of this is going to set the tone for their season. If you remember when Tennessee played the Gators or Utah 2 seasons ago played the Gators in the Swamp, both of those teams were more talented than that Florida team they played, but Florida got the job done because it's just such a difficult environment. I lean Miami, but I feel like if you're going to take a side, just go ahead and take another side in the game. Like, don't take this game. Take a prop. Take a total. Just stay away from the side because there's no real value on either side because it could be an absolute trap.
Yeah, you make a great point, all salient points, Brad. And to answer one of your questions about the talent, you had mentioned Vaughn of Miami. They rank 2nd according to their 247 Sports average talent rating in the ACC and 13th nationwide. Okay. So that's, they are an extremely talented team. And you also mentioned Damian Martinez. He's currently sitting there around 72.5, 73.5 right now. I think I have no problem if you want to go and take him. He's proven he dominated at 240 pounds between a pretty beefy offensive line over there at Oregon State. You come over here now with Miami, 121 career line starts returning for Mario Cristobal in year 3, who is a career offensive line coach. Good things trending in that direction. I have no problem with Martinez is over if you want to go that direction.
Yeah, it's certainly looking like this is the year for Miami to take the biggest leap in the program over the last few years. But starting at Florida is always going to be tough. And, the inter-Florida rivalry is there too. But as Brad said, may not be much value on the other side of the game or the total. So just rock with Elijah Badger, under 51.5 receiving yards there, and ride with Eric. Speaking of another tough road game, though, man, oh, man. Notre Dame, number 7, going to Texas A&M, number 20. This is a night game, Brad. This is what we want to see for the home team. The Aggies are laying -3. The total's sitting at 46.5. And rumor has it that already in the first 15 minutes of the show, we have our first collab of the season. Is that true? Yeah. Let's go.
This is exciting, right? Like the first collab of the season. And I'm probably going to jump in a collab with you guys later in the show too, because I was debating and going back and forth. But how can you not be excited about Texas A&M this season?
Yes.
Right. A lot of the talk about Texas A&M year over year was Jimbo Fisher can't get the job done. They were ranked higher than they deserved, and it wasn't because of the talent they put on the field. It was the coach who had the headset on, Jimbo Fisher, but now they have Elko, who we've seen be a really good coach. I thought this game was pretty interesting from a betting perspective because I thought the 3.5 was pretty fair line. It was pretty accurate. So I just went with money line, right? Night game, College Station, 12th man's going to be absolutely buzzing. Notre Dame is a funny team to kind of look at, right? Because they bring in Riley Leonard, but I thought last year was the year that Notre Dame really had to make the noise. Sam Hartman and company, Audric Estime, the offensive line were all the defensive line was good. Secondary was good. I thought that was their year. Now I think they're going to start trying to build into something. But this game, it just doesn't do it for me from a Notre Dame perspective. I'm on Texas A&M. I took the money line here, and this is one of those where I think if you take stats from last season, you can kind of scratch a lot of those out. You just have to talk about location and you have to talk about coaching. And that's no disrespect to Marcus Freeman, but I give a massive coaching advantage to Elko.
Yeah, if this was a bowl game, I'm probably on Notre Dame here, Marcus Freeman. He gets a job done there, you know. But this spot, like you said, I mean, it just sets up too with Mike Elko. He gets the spot as against his former quarterback here and Riley Leonard. Like, that's a great spot. We always know coaches are going to know how to get the best and the worst out of their players. And when you get your former player in your first game as a head coach, that sets you up to look pretty nicely at home in a night game with the 12th man. So, yeah, absolutely the Sharps will be lining up on A&M here. I'm on the money line as well. And I'll say this. We'll talk about some conference champion picks. If I'm trying to pick a sleeper in the SEC, I'd roll with the Aggies. I mean, they avoid Georgia, Alabama, and Ole Miss in SEC play, like 3 of the 4 best teams. So it certainly lines up well for them to start their season at home here with a dub. So, Brad, let's get this money line in our pockets. Let's cash our first collab. And, Eric, what else should we be playing in this game?
All right. Well, let's luckily this is a Notre Dame game, so NBC lets me talk extra long about it.
Yeah.
So that Mike Elko, you know, new head coach for Texas A&M, that's not the only one. That's not the only new coach we have in this matchup. We've got Mike Denbrock coming back. Welcome back, Cotter, to Denbrock from LSU, where he followed Brian Kelly. Now he comes back to Notre Dame. And remember last year, heavy pass script at LSU. Heavy. And that's even with some scrambles out of Jaden Daniels, 97th in standard down runs rate. All right, so that's neutral downs. Usually run the ball. Not on Mike Denbrock's watch. 114th in receptions to running backs last year, which is very interesting. They don't really use their backs out of the backfield. They lose 3 very good offensive linemen. Blake Fisher, right tackle, 3rd-round draft pick. Obviously, Joe Alt, the first offensive lineman taken in the entire draft, and they lost their center, who was an all-conference performer. So they really are rebuilding on the line. And like you're saying, hey, going up against Mike Elko's defense, right? That's not a walk in the park. I don't care if he's changing over from Duke. You know, there's previous recruits. This is A&M. He was the defensive coordinator there before he was at Duke. He knows the lay of the land. I'm not worried about him assimilating. And they're we're talking about A&M, right? Let's get to what the brass tacks are about the problems they had last year. The problems they had was giving up big plays. Do you know what Mike Elko does not allow?
Big plays.
You will not find big plays on Mike Elko's ledger, okay? That ain't what he does. Last year at Duke, ISO PPP, it measures the magnitude of big plays. 11th nationwide, 7th in explosiveness. This is an Elko team. And then when you get into the red zone, forget about it. Points per scoring opportunity, they're 27th. Red zone TD rate, 12th. Goal to go TD rate, 8th. It bows up when it gets tough with their back against the defense. And that's, time immemorial, every team you look at from Elko, that's been the case. I don't see the big plays coming in the same bunch as they did before. They're going to have to grind these yards out. It's going to be a hard way sort of a game script, in my opinion. I don't think it's going to be a free-flowing sort of an affair. I do like the script, that sort of you guys are talking about, where there's that, hey, you're getting 1.5 times your money, as you're saying, for that that money line bet on A&M. I think you can certainly make a pretty good case for that, being closer to even, especially, you go away with that field goal. But when it comes to what I'm looking at, and we're talking about that defense, the strength of A&M, they have their entire defensive line back. The back. Linebackers are going to be all set. I like their front 7. On Notre Dame's side, dual running backs. Out goes Audric Estime. You look at their depth chart. It's Jeremiah Love and it's Jadarian Price listed as the dreaded, and here's the air quotes for you, Brad. Or, right? The or.
Yeah, the or.
That's my air quotes, because ors deserve air quotes. So with Love being there, splitting time with Jadarian Price, rebuilt offensive line, strength of Texas A&M and their coaching staff is their ability to suppress big plays, especially on the ground, which is the strength of that defense. I personally have watched every single carry for each of the careers of Jadarian Price and Jeremiah Love, okay? Team Jeremiah Price. I think he takes this job eventually. I think he's better than Jeremiah Love. And I'm saying under 62.5 rushing yards for Jeremiah Love in this game.
I think this could be a slugfest. Like, I would lean the total under in this game, under 46.5. I think that both defenses are going to be pretty solid here. Notre Dame always has great defense, but as we stated, a lot of action to be had in that game. I think there's going to be the most action outside of probably Colorado at BetMGM in the LSU and USC game. Everybody's going to want a piece of this game. Top 25 matchup, so we say for now. I didn't have USC as a top 25 team in our poll, but LSU 13, USC 23. Tigers are 4.5-point favorites with a total of 64.5. Certainly screams an over game, which gives you value on the prop market as well. Brad, what are you looking at for this matchup?
Yeah, I remember when we were recording Bet in a Minute, I was really excited about both teams' team total over. And then, I think the number even moved since we talked about Bet in a Minute a little bit higher. I just went with a player prop here. And much like Eric talked about, it's for me thinking about game script. I went with Miller Moss over. The number actually was reposted in a new location, a little bit lower. I posted here at 288.5. It's at 284.5. If you shop it around. For me, there's a couple of things that I want to talk about here that are kind of important for this game. Number one, yes, I think LSU win this game. And yes, I think LSU have the potential to build up a substantial enough lead to where USC are going to have to be in a passing script. Helps Miller Moss. Another thing, I think that with Miller Moss, the difference between him and Caleb Williams is there's no Miller Moss 30-yard runs, 40-yard runs, 20-yard scrambles that are going to move the chains here. Miller Moss has to get it done, and how he gets there, how he achieves that goal is with Lincoln Riley designing plays that make life easy. We're talking about a big number here. Like, we're getting close to 300 yards where we're asking for a passing over. But in his bowl game, what was it, 348 that he threw for? And it was simple passes. And what's funny about that is that offensive line for USC was not great, right? Line gets better, hopefully. A little bit more protection for Miller Moss and a lot less of this improvising with our legs. As small as it might sound, every time you're moving the chains with your legs, that's taking away from the passing prop. In my opinion, I like Miller Moss. I do like Nussmeier as well passing. I didn't go with both quarterbacks, but we want to talk about offensive lines. We're talking about LSU here. We're talking about Will Campbell. Nussmeier is going to be able to have time to sit back and carve up this USC defense. It's going to take a long time for me, in my opinion, to trust Lynn's whatever he's going to do to kind of revolutionize this defense to make it better. But they were bad last year. They were bad year before that. They're just going to continue to be bad until Lynn can kind of establish this defense and get his guys in there. I like a shootout, but Miller Moss is my player prop.
Oh, you want bad? You're going to get bad secondary play in this game. Don't worry. All you hear about LSU all summer, and I was under the impression we might actually they can't be as bad as they were last year, were they? The reports have not been particularly promising. Ooh. I will say that about LSU secondary again. But I do like their defensive line. I think that they have enough of those big bodies there in that front seven that they'll at least be able to, with Harold Perkins, form a more formidable front. And I think that's kind of what they're going to be looking at. Against USC, we know they want to throw. That is what Lincoln Riley does. It's his identity. And when people tell you they are, you believe them, right? When it comes to their running game, Woody Marks comes in from Mississippi State. Career 2.6 yards after contact average. Career just a shade over 10% broken tackle rate. I do not like those particular metrics when we're dealing with a SEC front seven like we're talking about with LSU. He's listed at his top is 69.5 rushing yards. I think that is simply far, far too ambitious. If you look the way that Marshawn Lloyd, who is a much more physical back and talented, I mean, he was a third-round pick last year. You look at the way he was used, and even they spelled him a lot with Austin Jones, and he wasn't getting 20, 25 a game. I think you're probably looking at about 12, tops 15 carries, probably in the 13 range. I think that 70 yards is going to be a bridge too far, and I like the under there. And I like the over for Garrett Nussmeier, but 270 and a half yards. Keep in mind, LSU threw for 4,406 yards last season. And they called a heck of a lot more pass plays than they actually unleashed, because we know out of those 90 explosive plays that Jaden Daniels produced, which is the most in the history of the SEC, a lot of those came on the ground when he broke the pocket and was scrambling. Nussmeier doesn't do that. He stays in and he delivers and he facilitates. Phil Steele has LSU as the third most prolific passing offense according to his computer this season. Believe him, 270.5. Yeah. Give it to me.
Shout out to Phil Steele. Let's hear this. 280.5. Are you willing to get in on that, Eric?
What is it? That's at FanDuel, right? Everywhere's 270. FanDuel's at 280.
Yeah, you can buy a 270 right now.
Yeah, that's the outlier though. So like, there's that 10 yards of difference. So shop it, get 270. Yeah, but if you want to,
I was just trying to get a collab out of you because I was going to play a 280.5. But now that I found out there's 270.5s available, then I'm going to get on that.
Now you know, homie.
Yeah, I mean, if you just say the words, we can collab on it. But I think it's a great play as well, Eric. I think that Nussmeier is going to be a great bet most weeks to throw for 300+ yards. Like, there's going to be 3 or 4 quarterbacks that do that on a routinely basis, probably, that we can bet on and get value. And I think he's one of them for the first few weeks. But obviously, he carved up Wisconsin in the bowl game, 395 and 3 touchdowns to 1 pick. In addition to that, though, you guys hit it all well on the defense. The secondaries will be bad. USC's defense particularly terrible to me. 34 more points in 8 out of 13 games last year, 27 or more in 11 of those. LSU team total over 34.5 is a play for me. I think they can get 5 touchdowns. I think Nuss can throw 3 himself. And I think Nuss is a pretty good bet for the Heisman at 14-1. I'll throw that out there as well because those 4,400 passing yards need filled up, Eric. So we got a little collab on Garrett Nussmeier. I like that. We got a couple other plays too. And on the other side of the promo, we got Big Ten football to talk about. 5 games for you guys. Also a couple ladder plays as well. So stick around. And if you forgot or you haven't heard, fantasy football season just got better. $1 million better. You can create or join a private Yahoo Fantasy League and enter that $1 million NBC sweepstakes. Plus, you can earn extra entries when players on your fantasy roster score a touchdown during an opening weekend game on NBC or Peacock. Download the redesigned Yahoo Fantasy app or go to NBCsport.com/fantasymillion to learn more. Speaking of learning more, I must learn more about this LSU running back. Eric, you didn't talk about him in the last segment, but you listed him on the ladder plays. Now, Eric, Brad, and myself all have plays ranging from +110 to +920. So we got a cash, fellas. Let's bang one. Eric, go ahead.
Yeah, let's talk about Caleb Jackson. 240 pounds of twisted steel. He's out there. I mean, sub 1,100 meters. He has been the talk of camp. He's an absolute beast. Every time he got in there last season, he overshadowed Josh Williams, who is listed as the co-starter. I believe that is in name only. This seems to be a classic case of me to say, all right, Josh Williams, the old hand, he's a senior. We don't want to say that this young buck, this upstart, is going to usurp his place on the depth chart. Well, guess what? He's going to. And at 90+ rushing yards, +310, you're getting 3-to-1 odds on that. I think that is very, very possible for Mr. Caleb Williams. And, if you don't want to go all the way up there, heck, take his 49.5 over.
Yeah, it seemed like a very low total to be had, too. That's why I asked you. I saw his 49.5, and I'm like, why is this not on the play sheet? But we got the ladder. But you're just saying, basically, hey, there's so many yards, so many points to go around. Might as well try and run it up in that game. So I agree with that. Sticking with some guys that get 100+ yards, 90+ yards. Brad, what's up?
Listen, I'm going to a totally different game, and this is North Dakota State, Colorado. Will Shepherd comes over to Colorado. There's a lot of mouths to feed in this, right? I'm not going to sit here and say I'm betting Will Shepherd week in and week out because you have to think about this is 4 really strong wide receivers for Colorado. But I'm taking Will Shepherd to get at least 80+ receiving yards at +165, at least 90+ and at +250, and at least 100 yards at +360. Number one, let's talk about the game. This is going to be a game where Colorado are not going to run the ball. This is what we call a show out game. Neon Dion gets to show off what this offense can really do this season. They're not going to waste time running the ball. I would not be shocked if Shedeur Sanders has 400 passing yards in this game. Well, you bring in Will Shepherd, 6'3", big body wide receiver, good catch radius. What's funny about that is he can be a volume receiver as well as a guy who can go out and get those one-on-ones. What's better for a highlight reel than drawing up some nice design plays for Mr. Will Shepherd one-on-one? This 6'3", and I'm keep saying his height because it's important, because against North Dakota State, that's the difference between the FCS and these college bowl teams is size. Will Shepherd is going to get those targets downfield. Will Shepherd's going to gobble up a couple ones in the inside too. This is going to be a good opportunity to take Shepherd in a good spot where they're going to absolutely show out. Them boys are going to be flying like crazy. You're going to think that Colorado, every player can win the Heisman at the end of that game, because that's what we call a show out game. That's where you put all of your marbles on the table to get your season off popping.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm super pumped that you said that, because I'm on Shedeur Sanders already. I put that on Twitter when I was at NBC the other day. First bet of the college football season for me, and I think the ladder 400 plus at 920 was a great bet. So I was thrilled when I heard you say that. But as you said, there's so many toys in the garage to play with. How could you not just throw the ball 90% of the time if you're Colorado this season? You look at the running back props, there are none. And if there is one, it's like 30.5 yards. So it certainly just seems like Deion is going to let his son possibly be the number one pick by throwing the ball over the field. And if you know anything about him last year, minimal in turnovers, 3 interceptions, and he stretched the field, 10.8 yards per completion last year. He is only going to do more and more this year, and starting with North Dakota State. But speaking of other quarterbacks, Garrett Nussmeier, I like his ladders too, guys. We keep talking about all these guys in the LSU-USC game, but throwing for 400 yards for him, you can get that around 8 or 9 to 1 odds as well. Shedeur Sanders drops all the way down to 6 to 7 to 1 on some books. So you're talking about 2 quarterbacks who I feel like could throw for 300 yards every week. Might as well start laddering them from week 1 on, guys. So Garrett Nussmeier and Shedeur Sanders, 2 of my favorite ladders.
But I have one more that I didn't give out, and I kind of gave it out in the last one, Miller Moss, right? I'm going with Miller Moss ladder. It's a little conservative one at plus 110, but I'm also going to take him plus 300 plus yards at plus 310 as well. I was kind of saving this for this. One thing about Miller Moss, if you've looked in his limited action, but he's played 4 or 5 games, but 1 full game, crazy accurate. Crazy accuracy. Those 5 and 6 yard passes kind of rack up. They add up. If he continues to be efficient against a really bad secondary, I think he's going to get to this number. I think I was wrong in his number when he played in the in the bowl game against Louisville. He had 372 yards on 70% accuracy there. So, yeah, I'm excited for Miller Moss this season.
You're talking me into Miller Moss, because I had no hype surrounding this guy at all entering the season. But now I'm like, you know what? I think this LSU-USC game, I'm going to do nothing but be locked into this. Text, phone off, airplane mode, everything, because we got a lot of plays in this game. But I think it is going to be one of the best games of the week. But Big Ten, that is technically Big Ten game now. USC's come over. But speaking about some other Big Ten games, let's kick it off with North Carolina at Minnesota, because last year this was a thriller. If you're a Tar Heels fan, they smacked them up. Drake May was the quarterback, though. He is no longer there. The spread's only 1.5 in favor of the road team, North Carolina Tar Heels. Over-under sitting at 50.5. So I'll start with you, Eric. A total sit at 50.5 seemed a little high for me, but I do think both these teams, especially on the defensive end, are going to take a step back this year.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's certainly an ambitious one. We're talking about Minnesota, but not so much North Carolina and their defense. Keep in mind with Minnesota, they're the 19th most experienced team in the country coming back. And it was, took a noticeable step back defensively with departed defensive coordinator Joe Rossi now moving on and then bringing in a new one. So there was a little bit of changeover, but they're very, very experienced, on both lines. And the big problem with Minnesota was Ethan Kaliak-Manis was an objectively terrible passer. I mean, you have to be able to make the forward pass. He was horrible. Max Brosmer comes in from UNH. I'm over here. Right now I'm in Rhode Island, give it up to New England. So UNH product. And he heads over there, and you heard really good things about him in camp. And I got to watch a little bit of his games. I actually talked to Dylan Lobby back when we were at the Senior Bowl, and I asked him a little bit of the offense, and he had kind of touted Brosmer I didn't even know he was at Minnesota at the time, but it was an interesting conversation to have. So with North Carolina, just their defense, I have no respect for it, especially, that secondary. They can try to do whatever they want, but I have not been particularly impressed. I don't think anybody has by the Tar Heels. And with just a competent passer, I think you're going to see them not have too much problems moving the ball through the air. You have Daniel Jackson, who's a very accomplished receiver. The established number one, he's going to get pounded. 170 yards, I think, is too low for this sort of a script, as you mentioned, with a 50.5 over.
Kaliakmanis once caught a first-round pick by his coach, PJ Fleck, before he even touched the football field.
Dude, he is so bad about hyperbole with his players. I mean,
he is really bad.
That's why they stick around, though. They really believe in this guy. He's building a real culture here.
He's a quote guy. He's all about quotes. And talking about quotes with PJ Fleck, he talked about how bad they're running. Not bad, but how bad their running game was, how bad they were at stopping the run. Those are things that they want to improve, and I think this is a good opportunity against a North Carolina team who gave up like 165 rushing yards last season. Eric said the talent is coming back. Yeah, returning 4 full-time starters on the offensive line, but 5 guys who started on this offensive line. I'm taking Minnesota money line here. This is North Carolina who has to replace all of the Drake May production. On the road, Mr. Row the Boat is 7-7 against the spread as a home underdog. You know why that's important? Because plus 110, that's lower than 46%, which means we're taking that advantage. And then since what, 2000, I'm going to say 2000, let's call it 2017. We'll go with since 2017, 17 and 15 against the spread as a road dog, which is important too as well, because these are close numbers, but still give us a positive advantage when it comes to winning these outright games. I don't want to have to say too much about this because it's not a game I'm in love with, but it's a Thursday night game. It gets our chops wet, ready for the weekend.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't hate Minnesota. It's the side that I would play in this game too, getting the plus money, as you spoke on. The experience here, North Carolina's defense, Eric, you hit the nail on the head. I don't think we have to even mention anymore, but I'll tell you, one of the best defenses in the country, it's going to be the Ohio State Buckeyes. My number 1 ranked team in our poll. They are 48.5 point favorites, over under sitting at 58.5. So the people that play correct scores are going to be licking their chops at the 51-0s, the 58-0s. But I think we could see a score like that, gentlemen. I think Ohio State's going to roll in this game, and it's not shocking. Like, I'm not saying anything crazy, but I will say that Ohio State in the first quarter gets out to a nice lead. I think that their team total over 13.5 is a good bet here. I think they put up 2+ touchdowns in the first quarter, probably 2 on the nose. I think Akron, team total under 3.5. We're getting disgusting. We're bringing these team totals back. Under 3.5 is a great bet because I don't think the Zips get more than a field goal. And the main points are, obviously, we know they got a lot of talent. One of the most talented teams, a lot of transfers. Defense looks amazing. It's the quarterback position now. Last year, we talked about, is it Kyle McCord? Is it Devin Brown? Oh, they're going to switch. They're going to play maybe a half, switch off. Nah. It's Will Howard now, baby. This guy's got almost 30 career starts under his belt. He's a dual threat. I think that he's going to bring another component to this offense that they're missing. And despite them not having guys like Marvin Harrison Jr., they won't need them. They got plenty of talent coming back and coming in from other schools. So I think Ohio State first quarter, team total over 13.5 is a great play. And Akron team total under 3.5 is a good play. And if you can't get the team total over for Ohio State, take the first quarter spread, -10.5 to -13.5. It's basically the same thing. Brad, what you got?
Yeah, this is I looked everywhere for Ohio State bets. It's kind of funny. My best friend's in town, Ohio State alum, and he's the guy who really gets your juices flowing when it comes to betting a team. I'm going to be all over Ohio State, anything first quarter and first half, but I'm not going all the way up to the 48.5. What's funny is this line was 50.5, and it's coming down. I don't trust the Akron Zips. This offense is going to be so much fun to watch. Junkins, Harrison, Jeremiah Smith, like, I am so excited for the world to see Jeremiah Smith. This dude, true freshman, is an absolute monster. Give me Ohio State to score 100 points.
Yeah, I mean, hey, I got another 100 for you.
Joking. I'm just really excited.
With Sean Judkins, man, I think he's going to be the real deal for Ohio State. Yeah. Like, I know Travion Henderson is phenomenal in his own aspect as well, but Judkins could be the 1A in this 1A, 1B backfield.
Dark horse.
And at 100 to 1 for Heisman, I mean, we'll sprinkle a little something on Judkins. Sprinkle a little some. Eric, any thoughts on Ohio State before we move on?
Dude, 50 points is a lot of points.
So
it's a lot of points. I don't even know what to do with like. I just want to watch it and see. Does it happen? I don't know, man. I don't feel good about 7 touchdowns. I'm out. I'm just gonna watch.
Let me ask you
no
this:
props.
If you're
gonna put props on this game.
Yeah, they're not gonna have many. I mean, if any touchdown props, everyone's gonna be hammering like the two top running backs and receivers here. But let me ask you this: if you had to pick one team to score 70+ points or 50+ points, excuse me, Ohio State or Tennessee?
Yeah, Ohio State. You might as well go with Ohio State. Might as well, because they got Will Howard in there. You know, they want to make sure that they got the Quinshon and Trevion aspect. You have Jeremiah Smith. You want to get Carnell Tate, maybe Brandon Innis going too.
Innis, yeah.
A lot of prolific mouths to feed there. So they want to make sure they keep that second team running.
Yeah, this is going to be an amazing season for Ohio State. We'll get to the futures aspect about them later, but I am very excited about them. And a lot of people are pretty pumped, though, about Penn State, thinking this is the year that they're going to make the college football playoff. They're going to be a 10-11 win team. I'm going to say hold your horses. But they are laying 8.5 at West Virginia, total sitting at 51.5. And I got to say this, Brad, the 10-year-old V-Money would be going ham for this game. All right. I grew up a Penn State fan up until I was about 12, 13. And I loved West Virginia too. All right. But these teams can't trust either quarterback here. I think they're both going to be on the ground. And I think if I was going to bet, it would have to be an under, whether it's first quarter under 10.5 or the under 51.5 in general. But I'm going to lay back and enjoy it as if I was 10 years old again.
Well, you see the helmet behind my shoulder. That's, yes, the West Virginia helmet. Your boy is the West Virginia alum. And I think last season during our show, I was down on West Virginia to start the season, and Brown literally pulls a rabbit out of his hat and produces a 9-win season. I think West Virginia is getting so overblown, overvalued. They're the trendy team, them and Nebraska, the trendy team this season to start the season. Garrett Green's a really good quarterback. And I wrote this and I said, Garrett Green's a really good quarterback, but his most dynamic weapon is his leg. And that is what I consider his only weapon. I don't think his pass accuracy is good enough. I don't think it's going to make them some legitimate contender. And I was praying that if this line dropped to 7, I would be all over it, but it didn't. It actually went to 8, and now it's climbing back up because I think there's some late money coming in. I'm taking Garrett Green over 42.5 rushing yards. Garrett Green's weapon is his legs. Last season when they played, he was still sacked 3 times. It does get worrisome that Penn State are one of the leaders in sacks and tackles for losses, but he was sacked 3 times. He ran the ball 15 times still for 71 yards. I'm going with Mr. Garrett Green over 42.5 rushing yards.
Yeah, I'm going to actually go with a reason that you mentioned. I'm going to go with one of his receivers, Jaden Bray, under 32.5 receiving yards. And some of it has to do with what you mentioned. What does Garrett Green do very well? Oh, he runs the ball extremely well. That's his 100% his core competency, running those RPOs and just counting defenders. Are they coming up? Are they dropping? So the problem is with Garrett Green is his 55% completion rate, which when it comes to power 4 quarterbacks that we are looking at as leaders and upper echelon signal callers, that's as bad as you're going to get. 55%. You want to see him at least over 60. We just talked about Carson Beck a little while ago, 72% completion rate. So that's a big factor in terms of what they want to do is run the ball. I sincerely believe that with Jaheim White and CJ Donaldson. But when they do throw, it's going to tight end Cole Taylor, who I love. I think he's awesome. Like one really underrated receiving tight end. And in addition, I really like Hudson Clement. I'm a Hudson Clement guy, straight up. Every time I watched him last season, he was out there doing great things. I think he ends up taking control of the receiving room, and that Bray ends up being the Y, excuse me, the Z, as opposed to that prominent X. And, given the fact they're playing Penn State's secondary, all right, you got to show me, Jaden Bray. Show it to me. Missed all last season. Prove it.
Yeah, Penn State's certainly one of the best secondaries entering this season, too. And last year they were so impressive. Watching them in person, it was an awesome atmosphere. I'd never been on to West Virginia, but this would have been a great game for us to go visit and check out. You just had to keep the Four Locos away from me, man. Four Locos in college football games back in the day did not do well. And,
I thought you said Four Lobos, like
Lobos. No, Four Locos.
I've never had a Four Loco, and I never will, you crazy kids.
Oh man, yeah, you were too
Four
old for that,
Loko.
Eric, by that time when
You
those
guys are
came out.
wild.
But it's okay. Let's
No,
head
we had
over
MD
to the.
2020. MD 2020 was the version when I was growing up. Okay, go on.
Don't even know what that is. Anyways,
See,
I don't know what this is doing on the rundown. UCLA at Hawaii. This is a Big Ten game. In what year? 2024. That's the answer. The Bruins are laying 14 at Hawaii on the island, 54.5. No play for me here in this game because Hawaii just totally embarrassed themselves and myself in week 0. But Eric, what do you got in this matchup?
well, we got to talk about Toddler Vaughn. We're going to get to talk about young Eric too, because young Eric gets to do something he's been waiting to do his whole life.
What's that?
New offensive coordinator for the UCLA Bruins, Eric sleeping with Bieniemy. Thank you, Chris Berman. Thank you. That being said, out goes D'Anton Lynn, as we talked about, defensive coordinator for UCLA over there at USC now. That's not good because he was an absolute ace when it came to calling a D. Going to Hawaii too, right? Hawaii played week 0, played Delaware State, who missed their team flight, had to take 3 layovers in order to finally make it instead of the 1 flight they had. And they were still tied with them 14-14 in the third quarter. I'm concerned.
Yeah.
Okay. That's how you
Okay.
concern me. That's how you do it. Delaware State was 1-11 last year. They were 0 everything in conference. So I'm concerned about their ability to stop UCLA. I think that, when it comes to what they want to do, Chase Garber's, veteran QB. With Hawaii, they can move the ball. They are running and shooting. They have a retooling defense against UCLA. They already had at least a run through. So I think they can at least be somewhat productive and put some points on the board. I know UCLA is going to have any problems. So I'm going over 54.5.
Well, Vaughn, Eric, I don't have anything for this. I do think, if I were being honest, I do think the 14 points is too many to lay with UCLA on the road. But I don't trust either one of these teams. So let's talk about a game and a team that made us, especially Vaughn, a lot of money. Fresno State at Michigan. Michigan laying 21 points. Total set at 45.5. Vaughn, I know you have some sicko gross bet, so go ahead and lay it on us, man.
It's definitely tempting now to take Fresno State plus the 21. Now that it's moved off at 19.5 and 20.5, and you're getting a key number. But as you guys may know, Jim Harbaugh returns to Michigan for this game. He's getting his rings. McCarthy, Corum, Roman Wilson, these guys aren't coming back, though. So we don't know what Michigan's offense is going to look like, which is scary, but I think they get enough juice here. And if you're going to back Michigan to any degree, it's got to be the first quarter, minus 6.5. Their defense is going to be one of the best in the Big Ten in the country yet again, but we have to wait and see what that quarterback position is going to look like and what other weapons outside of Donovan Edwards at the running back position steps up. So I do like Michigan early as a very strong lean, minus 6.5, but if they do get up in that lead and you cash that bet, I would be taking Fresno State on a live bet and trying to get them a little bit better than plus 21, maybe 24.5 or something like that in my pocket. But not the most entertaining season opener for the Michigan Wolverines, but it is going to be a test for them. So they better watch out because Fresno State has represented the Mountain West Conference very, very well lately. And someone that's represented Brad Thomas's pockets very, very well has been Scotty Scheffler and Xander Schauffele. The Tour Championship is here. You can watch both of them and more of the top 30 golfers on the PGA Tour when they face off for the FedEx Cup this week. And you can catch it live on NBC Golf Channel in Peacock from Thursday through Sunday.
As you all know by now, we've teamed up with BetMGM this season. We'll be using BetMGM lines to make all our picks, and we'll have special offers for our listeners each week. If you haven't signed up to BetMGM yet, use bonus code BETEDGE, and you'll get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using bonus code BETEDGE. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game, and you'll receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your first bet loses. Just make sure you use bonus code BETEDGE when you sign up. See BetMGM.com for terms. 21 plus only. U.S. promotional offers not available in New York, Nevada, Ontario, or Puerto Rico. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Available in the U.S. Call 8778-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467369 in New York. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP in Arizona, 1-800-327-5050 in Massachusetts, 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa, 1-800-981 0023 in Puerto Rico. First bet offer for new customers only, subject to eligibility requirements. Rewards are non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire in 7 days in partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. Don't forget, if you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code BETEDGE and get your $1,500 first bet offer today.
Speaking of BetMGM, the People's Parlay may be on there. And if you find it, you're going to win some money this week because we're only coming with winners for week 1. But I got to say, we did talk about 2 of these bets already, so we'll keep it brief. I am on LSU, team total over 34.5 for the People's Parlay. We have a Friday, Saturday, Sunday play. And I'm going to be the tail end of this. Brad, which end will you be?
Yeah, that's called the breakfast, lunch, and dinner parlay. I have Texas A&M money line.
Yeah, well, I'm going to go with Stanford, TCU, a game that I'm very excited about, even though, understand, there's so many incredible week 1 games that didn't make our list. Over 59.5 points. I think this is going to be a classic shootout between Stanford, which gave up 38 points a game last year, and TCU, who is retooling after the big 2022 run. They were kind of down last year. Josh Hoover's back. I think they've retooled, and they will be potent enough for both teams to be able to clear this 59.5.
That's right. Friday night, Saturday afternoon, and Sunday night games. Eric's game is pretty late, though, so you might wake up Saturday morning and find out if you won or lost. But hopefully it's a winner. We did pretty well in the People's Parlay. Barely made a profit last year, but this year we're coming back for a little bit of revenge. But let's talk about some of our favorite bets of the week before we talk about our best bet, because we all hit above 60% last year, so we want to keep that rolling again. Brad, why don't you kick us off for one of your favorite bets of the week?
Man, UTEP at Nebraska. I feel like last season for the season opener, I bet on Nebraska. It's not a train that you want to get on for a long time. You get on for a short time and have a good time. It's Nebraska minus 27.5 against UTEP. First and foremost, UTEP not really returning a bunch of production, like 120th, in returning production. Number 2, UTEP, really horrible against the run. They're 129th against the run last season. Why? Size, scheme. Nebraska packs a powerful punch on that offensive line. I think they're going to be better on both sides of the ball, winning the war in the trenches. And it's Dylan Raiola time. Dylan Raiola. So, go ahead and give me the all hype. I talked about hype early in the show. This is all going to come to fruition in week 1. I think it'll fizzle out as the season goes on, though.
What do you think about Dylan Raiola?
For me, yes. First start for Dylan Raiola. 243.5 is his line for passing yardage. He's also up to, I think, at 225.5 for his rushing yardage. I'm very interested to see how this all goes down. Playing UTEP, like I said, this should be a pretty easy go of it. But I don't know how often they'll really want to put the full kit and caboodle out there for the Big Ten to kind of look at where they got UTEP. I think they'll probably rotate a little bit. A lot of Gabe Irvin Jr., see a little Dante Dowdell. We'll get a little bit of the action there in terms of the RPO game. And sure, they'll be throwing some passes, but once it's time to put it in a cruise, Nebraska isn't going to want to expose the playbook too much or get too deep into the weeds against a very, very low-level UTEP team. They're going to do just enough, get it in hand, put it in cruise control, and I don't think that really lends to a passing-heavy script. For a true freshman QB, you're going to want to protect a little bit. So I'm going with the under 243.5.
Yeah, and UTEP has had a pretty weak rush defense, too, the past few years. It's been bad. Me being a North Texas guy, I've watched a lot of UTEP football the past few years. So I will never lay 28.5 with Nebraska or whatever it is. But, this is probably a good opponent for them to probably run up the score a little bit. I'm going to go into a very ugly game Friday night. It's Southern Utah in Utah. Okay. The Utes are going to be one of the best teams, I think, in the Big 12 this year. They held Florida, Baylor, UCLA, Weber State, and California to 14 or fewer points in 5 of their first 6 games last year. They got a great defense back. Sorry, Eric's cousin Cole Bishop will not be here to see them hopefully win a ring, but I think this is a team that's absolutely going to stuff Southern Utah. They looked good last year against Arizona State and BYU with 16 and 21 points, but getting over 7 against the Utes, a team that has so much hype around them, I don't think it will happen. So I took under 7.5 team total for Southern Utah. Got that about minus 150, so it's juiced. But if you can find it under 0.5 touchdowns at plus money, I would sprinkle that. rather than playing the minus 150 price.
All right. I'll go with that. I'm really excited about this one, frankly. Tyler Van Dyke, your friend and mine, transferring from Miami over to Wisconsin. And let's just say when it comes to prolific rushing quarterbacks, nobody talks about Tyler Van Dyke. And that's maybe Mrs. Van Dyke. But I'll be honest, last year, just twice did he clear this number. And frankly, only 3 times was he even in positive yardage. Not known for his ability to navigate the pocket or his pressure to sack rate. I cannot imagine a scenario that unfolds where Tyler Van Dyke runs for 11 yards. What is happening here? What is falling apart in society that he's run for 11 yards? I cannot back this in any way, shape, or form. Went 18-4 last year in my best bets. Absolutely slayed them. Woo. This is my best bet for today. This is it. It's Tyler Van Dyke. Under 10.5 rushing yards. You go get it now.
Yo, V-Money. So you're not concerned at all about Florida State going overseas, losing, and then coming back and playing against a team who played them close. I think you like a game, a bet in this game, kind of centric about the Seminoles. What do you like?
Yeah, as I said, this one's probably going to embarrass me, but I have a hate for Bill O'Brien, man. And he's coaching Boston College now, and everyone's saying BC, they got all these guys back, 17. They're going to be better. They're playing all these teams close. They're competitive. Well, we'll see. We'll see what Bill O'Brien has for them. But I think Florida State's going to be a team that you can back early, Brad. I don't think that coming back overseas is going to affect them too much. I think they're going to be very motivated to get out early on Boston College. So if you're getting a first quarter minus 3.5 to minus 6.5, I think that's a good bet and something I have in pocket. But yeah, Bill O'Brien, not a big fan. What do you got, Brad? You got a best bet for us?
I do have a best bet, and I went back and forth on what I was going to make my best bet. It's nothing new. It's the game I'm so excited for, and that's Georgia. I'm going to be like, go Dogs the whole time. Georgia minus 13.
Hey, love that. I got, as my best bet, how to find a team total, as usual, guys. And there's only one way to do it when I think that this team could make the college football playoff at 6-1 odds. I'm talking the Iowa Hawkeyes. Yeah, remember all the punts? Not as much, but there will be a lot. But they'll be forcing other teams to punt a lot more. You can get a 7.5 at minus 105 for Illinois State team total, or you can get the 8.5 at minus 115. That's just avoiding a 2-point conversion or some weird mishap to happen. But when you look at Iowa, man, I really think this is going to be one of the 5 best defenses in the entire country, and they're coming back absolutely loaded. So that is my best bet, starting 1-0 in the team total departments.
I like that. I like that a lot.
How could you not like it? Illinois State.
Go out and show me 2 scores.
Name a player. Name a player for Illinois State. You can't. They're going under. So, yeah, I like that one a lot here. Before we get out of here, guys, let's hit our favorite futures plays. And don't be scared. Give us something good. Brad, I'll lead off with you.
Something good? Favorite futures play?
Alabama.
Man, I feel like giving out Miami is too boring. Everyone's going to do that. So I'm going to go a little different here. Let me go pull up my notes to see what my favorite one is. Oh, yes. I'm going South Florida to win the American. It's 7-1. That is right. Last year, Florida State, #1 in the country in returning production. What did they do? They went undefeated. I'm not saying the Seminoles are. I'm not saying the South Florida is the Seminoles, right? I'm not saying that, but they're returning 72% of their production. They have a great quarterback in Brown who can do both, throw the ball and run like a beast. And they have a coach that I absolutely really like. I think South Florida is going to be very good. They're going to be better on defense. They were really poor against teams above 500 in close games, but couldn't get it done. I think this year, with the experience, those really agonizing losses, even one that happened against Alabama where they couldn't get anything done, even though they had every mental edge in that game, I think that changes things, and they win the American 7-1.
Yeah, I don't hate that price. I'm going a little bit down the board with my college football playoffs. Like I said, I like the Iowa Hawkeyes at 6-1. When you look at who they avoid this year, they literally are avoiding some of the biggest games possible. Like they don't have to play Oregon. They don't have to play Michigan. They don't have to play Penn State. They got the Ohio State game, and the second toughest game, probably say at home against Washington, maybe at UCLA. Like Iowa doesn't play a tough schedule, so I really like them at 6-1 to make the college football playoff. Better quarterback play too, new OC, which is very, very important. But 3 more teams quickly that I like to make the college football playoffs. All plus money, LSU, plus 120. Nuss, plus 180. The Tennessee Vols. Nico, great quarterback, also going to ball out. And plus 200, the Utah Utes with Cam Rising coming back. Amazing defense. I'm basically targeting a lot of teams with stellar quarterbacks and some solid defenses too. But Eric, what do you got as far as your futures, whether it's a conference, a prop, or a champion?
Yeah, well, let's go with you mentioned Utah at plus 200 to make the playoff. Well, you can get him right now on Underdog at plus 319 to win the Big 12 conference. And I think with them coming over, having a much easier schedule than they did last year, having to deal with a couple of those powerhouses in Washington and Oregon, they come in, they have a cream puff off conference schedule to kind of get them prepped, but then they're in the Big 12 now. I think that with Cam Rising back with 9 returning starters on defense, besides my cousin, unfortunately, and Sione Vake, I think that this team is the best team in that conference, and getting 3.25 almost to 1 in order to go with it sounds good to me.
Yeah, absolutely love that. So we're riding together on that one. I know if you follow us on X, Mr. Brad Thomas, CFB Froton, and V Money Sports. Brad and I have talked about Ohio State and our love for them to win the Big Ten. So that's also play for ours at plus 155. You've probably seen a lot of people talk about that, so we won't spend too much time. But wrapping it up, Brad has been on a roll the past few years with the Heisman picks. So without further ado, who we putting our money on this year, Brad?
Call me a homer, but I'm going with Jalen Milroe. Yes, I've been on an absolute roll with Heisman. Devonta Smith, Bryce Young, Caleb Williams. Even last year, I was so close with Michael Penix, but I'm going with Jalen Milroe, and it's not for reasons you kind of think that a homer would talk about. Number one, we need a team whose defense is going to be good enough to not have them lose more than 3 games, but not great. Alabama coming in with a new defense, but lost a lot of pieces. Arguably their best player in Caleb Downs, right? Swarm defense is going to take some time to adapt so they can get into shootouts. We need someone who's dynamic, either with their arm or has an elite receiver core, or dynamic with their legs. Jalen Milroe, absolutely dynamic. Play calling needs to be important. In the last 2 seasons at Washington, Kalen DeBoer had either the number 1 or number 2 passing attack. You might say, well, Brad, that's Michael Penix. Well, what happened when he was at his last college? What was that? Fresno State. He was top 10 in passing each year he was there. That means he knows how to get the most out of his quarterback. Jalen Milroe will be the key to success for Alabama. They're not going to win it with defense. So that means he's going to be put up big numbers at 14-1. It's an absolutely great price.
He is going to be most of the success for Alabama. I agree, man. I mean, especially how last season ended for them against Michigan. I think he'll be out for blood this season. I have 5 Heisman bets, actually. But I have to say, my favorite for the price, anywhere from 18-1 to 20-1. MGM's throwing 21 out there for Garrett Nussmeier of LSU. A lot of things Eric spoke on earlier. There are so much yards and so much talent around him for him to go out there and throw for 4,000, 4,500 yards. That's a big key for quarterbacks, too, to win the Heisman. If they're not getting it done with their legs as well, like Jalen Milroe can, they got to do it like Nussmeier can. So that's one of my favorite picks to win the Heisman. Eric, what say you?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Jackson Dart, Ole Miss quarterback. He's at 1,600 in order to win it. And a lot of that has to do, I mean, that entire first half of the schedule through the first 6 games, they're going to run roughshod through. So week 7, they're going to head in and play LSU, and that is going to be a pretty darn big game with a lot of points getting scored. That's my personal opinion. But Lane Kiffin has done a great job in terms of reinforcing the things they needed in the portal, especially that offensive line. It was so leaky last year. I think they've gotten that squared away, and you're going to see with Quinshon Judkins gone, this is going to fall on Dart. And if this team is going to swim, he's going to be the one doing it. And I'm laying 16-1 to find out.
It basically sounds like you should take an SEC quarterback this year to win Heisman, and at least one of them will get the job done, is what we're saying. But great show as always, guys, for the first one of the season. Extremely happy, excited, proud, everything. I'm feeling all the emotions today coming back here with you guys. So let's have a great season. We had everything you can imagine from props, sides, and team totals. So make sure you guys check it all out. We're going to give you thank you to Brad Thomas, Eric Froton, and myself. Thank you to our producers backstage and all of you listening and viewing. Make sure you subscribe and download if you're listening in audio version. and make sure you like us on YouTube as well. Thank you, and best of luck with your week 1 bets. Let's make some money.